Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 20 of Learning Outside the Lines with Kyle and Glenn, or Glenn and Kyle. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It does not. We're excited that we keep rolling this along. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
Real quick.
2-0.
Yeah, I know. It's like a small milestone, right?
Episode 20. Yeah.
We're going to take a shot at turning some of this into a podcast. That's one thing that we just learned, that Anchor FM allows you to take things like these videos we record, and turn them into podcasts. So I think we might give that a try and keep reaching another part of the audience. So stay tuned for more on that.
Definitely.
Real quick preview before we kind of get into our anecdotes and all that fun stuff. Our special guest today is Dr. Daria Williamson. So Dr. Williamson is a English teacher back in the day who became a counselor, who became an academy coach. And you're like, what is an academy coach? Well, you'll find out today. That's kind of the whole idea of what's going to happen, is you'll get some insight there. So I guess, let's go ahead and get into it. I'm sorry. I got
it's okay. So
off to the side there. So go ahead. What's kind of going on, Glenn?
Well, I actually blame you for all the fun I've been having the last couple days. Your family gave us a sandbox, and we set that up in the backyard. And Kyle, you want to talk about amazing? What have I been doing? Like all DLD? I don't even know. Like miserable inside my cave, working on my computer. No, there's a better way. So I just sat out there really the last couple days with a camp chair and a soda while the little one played in the sandbox. And you want to talk about utopia? I've discovered a new trick today. It was like, I'm bored, Daddy. And I'm like, okay, find me some sticks. And then it was a stick finding game while I worked. And I collected almost all the sticks out of the backyard. And she was busy and had fun, and I got work done.
Yep.
It's like a win-win-win.
If you want another quick piece of advice that you can use with your sandbox, is you can hide treasure in there. So toys or pennies or whatever you want her to find, and say, hey, find as many as you can. It will keep her busy for quite a while.
A mythical creature that hides things in there. We can create like a whole mythology. I've got to get started on this. Like I'm thinking big. Like we got to go scope like origin story, like its own domain, like where it lives and comes from, and then goes back to. And I mean, we can really have some fun with this.
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and get into my quick share too. No, I think it's great, man. As a mythology teacher, I know that this is something that is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share, this is something we discovered very, very recently. We were sharing our episodes on another Facebook group, and then we got pinged by a gentleman who started this group, which is trying to bring educators who are doing YouTube channels together to share their tips, their tricks, and what they do, and share their channels together. So it's called Teacher YouTubers. It is a kind of like an invite / you've got to make a request to join. So you can always make the request, but I think the person who has created this space is looking for people who are content creators or want to create content. So if you've been watching us do our thing and you're interested in maybe trying it, this might be a cool spot for you. But what I've actually liked about it is when you kind of scroll through, you get a chance to see, there's our stuff, for instance, but other teachers who are doing things, math teachers, folks who are doing work in science, and honestly, a lot of these people's YouTube channels are a little bit nicer than ours, but we're trucking right along either way.
Yeah.
But this is a neat space created by this gentleman, Mehmet, I think might be how you pronounce his name. Never met the person, but he's a teacher in Canada who started a YouTube channel and has been trying to bring those forces of good together. So just wanted to kind of share that. I thought that'd be a neat thing to bring to the table.
Yeah,
so without
definitely.
further ado, let's jump into what our digital teaching hack is.
All right. Well, we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into podcasts, and I got student permission to share these with you guys today. So I have two students that have I probably have a few dozen students that have done an equal number of podcasts now. but these are just two that I'm highlighting. And what I want to talk about for the digital teaching hack is when we're doing podcasting, a big difference between last year's podcasts and this year's podcast for me personally was the rep mentality. And what I mean by that is we do a lot of these different iterations of podcasts. And I think the difference between like last year and this year is just the number of reps. So I'm having students create multiple iterations of podcasts doing different tasks this year. Like if we do writing in the classroom, we don't say, okay, you're going to write 1 or 2 times and that's it. That's it. Right. Cool. No, this is just another medium of creative expression and a voice. So it deserves and needs as many reps, if not more, than a more conventional form of student creative activity. So I think that's been my big win this year. So just to highlight the number of episodes this student created now, and this is all before their summative grade with podcasting. So some of these episodes, I mean, they're all very short, but they're very tightly packed with a purpose. So I sent them on different missions, like create a storytelling podcast. Let's breathe in some good story podcasts and let's breathe out a storytelling episode. Okay, let's try an interview. Breathe in some interview episodes, take some notes, and now breathe out an interview podcast. And by the time we get up here, these are just journals. I've been having them do journal responses to their podcasting app. And by the time we get up here, they're just so much better than the summative ones I had last year. And these are just journal entries, but they're so much more comfortable. This is another student that's also been doing multiple episodes. And by the time they get up here, it's just so much more comfortable.
Well, I like the metaphor too about you talking about them breathing something in and then breathing it back out. You know, that look at the model, suck that model in, let that model, then do your own version of it.
That's straight language arts office Kool-Aid, by the way. That's something that I've definitely picked up just from working in Gwinnett with language arts teachers.
Well, I mean, even in the world of CTE, we've been talking a lot about when we talk about literacy work with a teacher who feels really uncomfortable with literacy, which take your pick of almost any CTE teacher typically. Yeah. It's what you breathe in and it's what you breathe out. And it's it's a quality metaphor, I think, for what we're trying to get kids to do, right?
And the kids feel just as uncomfortable, and that's the problem, is like they're not putting those reps in. And it'd be like if we had a kid, okay, go write your 5-page essay you've written once in your life, you've written twice in your life, now write an analysis paper. Yep. Like what? I haven't been practicing any of the moves that go into an analysis paper.
Right, and and I think that speaks to, you talked about how you're getting more quality content right now. You're benefiting probably from two things. The remote learning is probably helping because this is a perfect device for remote work. Yeah. But I also think you're benefiting from that. This is year 2 of podcasting for you. And so you took all those things you learned, the way you tripped and fell, and that didn't work the way I wanted it to. And it's amazing how in just 1 year of refinement, what you're getting out of it. And I know recently you were just telling me that you plan on really kind of integrating podcasting throughout an entire year, right? Like you're talking about putting a podcasting station in your classroom.
Yep. So as students work around and do small group work, let's have a class podcast we work on together throughout the whole year. Yeah. And that's kind of student driven. That would be the dream, is a student driven one. So.
Well, we'll go down that rabbit hole at a future episode, I'm sure. But in the meantime, let's get into part 2 of what we love to do on the show, which is something we called What's the Good Word?
Yeah, what's the good word?
So What's the Good Word is our opportunity to bring on a guest with a different perspective in the edu-sphere, as I've been recently calling it. But it's our chance to bring in perspectives of what's going on. Now, the birth of this whole YouTube channel was because we wanted to have conversations around this unique. We all got kicked into remote learning suddenly, and COVID-19 is a big deal, and we're in a pandemic. So it'll be interesting to see how this changes as that might wind down. But in the meantime, it's still affecting a lot of different perspectives across education. So we're bringing on another perspective today. So as I previewed earlier for you, Dr. Daria Williamson is going to be joining us here in just a second. So Dr. Williamson, again, has a background as an English teacher, as a counselor for many years, and now she is the academy coach at Shiloh High School. And she's going to give us a chance to kind of tell us what that is and connect with us a little bit here. So let's go ahead and bring Daria on with us.
Woo.
Hello, Dr. Williamson. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Hello.
I am
Hi,
so
Dr.
excited to
Williamson.
be here. Hi, Glenn. Call me
Well,
Daria, please.
okay, Daria, definitely. That title is awesome, though. I mean, the doctor. Yes, yes. It's cool. One day, it's on the radar. So a lot of respect.
Well, we're excited to have you, and thanks for agreeing to it. I mean, I know I kind of blindsided you a little bit with my request of like, hey, do you want to be on this silly YouTube channel thing we started? But you were more than agreeable, so thank you.
I don't know.
Well, so just a quick background kind of about you. How long were you an English teacher? How long were you a counselor? And I know you've only been an academy coach for about a year, but what's some of the background?
Okay, so I was an English teacher for 3 years, and I taught ninth grade English primarily because at that time, after my first year of teaching, I had the choice of what I wanted to teach, and no one else wanted ninth grade English. So I certainly got my wish. I taught English again starting in 2010. I started teaching English 1101 and 1102 at Georgia Perimeter. And I taught there for about 4 years. And it was one of my most enjoyable teaching experiences. I've also taught English at Shorter College and at Argosy University, which is now no longer. So I've taught English in a couple of different environments, but I've spent the majority of my K-12 career as a counselor. So I became a counselor after the 3 years of teaching English, and that's what I've done for 20 years.
Okay.
And then, of course, last year I had the opportunity to become an academy coach, and that was a wonderful and short experience. So.
Well, it's a short experience for a good reason. Just because I know you, or I've gotten to know you really well over this last year, you're going to get a chance to become an assistant principal in the upcoming year. So congratulations again.
Thank you.
That'll be a whole new part of your journey as an educator.
Yes.
But just to kind of stick with the topic at hand of being an academy coach, what is an academy coach?
So really, in a nutshell, an academy coach is the person who connects academia to industry. So in the schoolhouse, I am the person who makes sure that students have a connection with what they're doing in their core subject areas and what that could look like in the real world. So I'm bringing real world people into the schoolhouse. I'm working with teachers to create project-based learning so that students get a real world sense of how this applies. So those types of activities so that they see the connection between the academic portion and what it means outside of the academic environment.
Yeah, I would imagine that your counseling experience prepared you to do something like that. You're having to try to help, upperclassmen figure out, well, what are you going to do next? This kind of concentrates that even further. Just out of curiosity too, so when you took on the role, how did it changed the way you saw life for a student after high school, or did it at all? I'm making an assumption by asking that question.
No, it didn't. It didn't change the way I saw life for a student after high school. It really, though, did impact the way I saw life for student inside of the high school because, from my counseling standpoint, I did just that. I worked with them on their choices after high school. Mm-hmm. So, you need to research these careers. You need to make sure you do well. You need to research post-secondary options. However, now I'm making that a part of their learning experience inside of the classroom. So it was almost like as a counselor, it was separate from the classroom. And as an academy coach, I'm bringing it inside of the classroom.
Yep. So my reveal here is that I was an academy coach myself for a little while. That's part of what I loved. I felt like I was building bridges in a classroom to things that were going to be happening later in that child's life. And it didn't feel like it was a one-off It didn't feel like it was a drop in the bucket. You feel like you were always kind of investing in the larger scale of what was happening on campus. So
it wasn't artificial.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So part of what you do with all of this is you support teachers, like you said, with, building projects or helping them navigate, working with students and trying to pull them back from the brink in some cases, a little bit of that counseling background too. But so tell us, since you've had to go to this remote space like the rest of us, what have you been doing to try to support students while we've been in shelter in place?
So one thing that I do every week, it really focuses on parents because, even as a counselor, I would say that my form in counseling was parent engagement. What happens a lot of times in the schoolhouse is that we, talk to students, we talk to them ad nauseum, right? Oh, you've got to do this, you've got to make these choices, you have to go through these processes, do it regardless. We're adults and they're children and they know how to follow the rules, but they don't understand the gravity of the decisions that they're making. They don't really have the mature decision-making skills to do that. Parents do, right? They know the importance of the decisions that students are tasked or charged with making. However, they don't have the information. So I always wanted to be the person to make sure they were just as knowledgeable about the options, the choices, the processes as their children were. So I was, as a counselor, I was the person who hosted, or we all hosted, but it was my idea to have parent engagement nights, to have what I now have online, which is Coffee and Conversations, but there is an academy to it. In fact, next week I'll be hosting a Coffee and Conversation. So it's an online meeting for parents. So, I promise that it's 30 minutes. It has not been 30 minutes yet. It's always an hour or more, but it is an opportunity for them to tell me what they want to learn about. I research that information and I present it to them every Thursday at either 10 a.m. or 5 p.m. Well, I present at 10 a.m. and 5 p.m., but they have the option of coming into either one to learn either how they can support their student during COVID or during this pandemic, how to get ready for next school year, understanding the academy model and how to utilize it to your advantage. Right now, the biggest request for this week is graduation requirements, which is funny because I feel like we say that all the time, but that is what I'm presenting. So
yeah.
that's what I've done since really the beginning of this pandemic. What I am working on now, aside from the Academy Summer Institute, is the career training program for next year that Kyle, we talked about. That's the program to ensure that the students who are on track to graduate but don't have a post-secondary plan can secure a job, well, not a job, a career locally that will allow them to be independent and contributing citizens or members
that was
of society.
that's kind of the follow-up question to what you were talking about was going to be about that, right? So this idea of, you had a plan in place for what summer was going to start to look like and how you were going to start bridging some things. So tell us a little bit more about, you're not going to get to do this program you've envisioned the way you wanted to, but you are hoping to hand it off to the next coach that's going to be on
Yes, ma'am.
campus.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
What is it that you're building? Explain to us what this thing will be when it happens.
Okay, so, being transparent, I stole it. I stole this idea from
True educator.
Every good educator does it.
Exactly.
But essentially, what they did is they took the students who were on track for graduation but did not have post-secondary plans. They vetted them essentially to make sure that they were willing to do this program, that they had an interest in something, post-secondary speaking, like they wanted to do something, they just didn't have an idea of what to do. And then what they did is they looked at their local economy and what jobs were needed. In Jonesboro, I believe it was manufacturing jobs that were in high demand. So they worked with their local chamber of commerce and the local schools, the technical school in that area. And they came up with a 2-week program that focused on the soft skills that students would need in order to be successful, right? The communication skills, the ability, the teamwork skills, the consensus building skills. And then they also worked with the manufacturing industries locally to come up with a program for the other portion of the other week where they got those hard skills, understanding what that job required and getting training in it. So after 2 weeks, if they completed the program, if they were successful in completing the program, they were guaranteed an entry-level position.
That's amazing.
Isn't it?
That is amazing. Yeah, talk about transforming lives.
Yes, yes. So I said, well, we
wow.
need to do that. I stole it. And the lady, I think her name is Miss Jones, if I'm remembering correctly, who was so wonderful and so generous with her knowledge and her materials, gave me everything. So I talked with Kyle Jones and got the information for Gwinnett Waterworks. So that's what we're doing for our students.
That's so cool. That's huge. Wow.
Yeah, we had identified a need, and for those of you in the CTE world, you may know what the CLNA is. It's this whole piece of Perkins 5 grant that we have to do where we're really kind of looking at our local needs and what's going on in the community in terms of job market and future projections. And one of our conversations centered around the local waterworks, and one of the women who is in charge of kind of making sure that they have employees and they've got the workforce says, you know, we don't have enough people. We're in a shortage on a regular basis, and we need that pipeline. So there's a really great opportunity there that Child is going to take advantage of. So if it makes you feel any better, I'm going to work really hard with the new academy coach to make this happen too. So we'll try not to let it go asunder. Well, we're kind of up against time, but just want to thank you again for joining us and talking to us about what you do and what you've been planning and how you've been supporting students and really supporting students through parents, which I think is awesome.
That's huge because, I mean, sorry, just to go back, I love that part that you said that even though it's what you're always seem to be talking about, they just want you to talk about graduation. I think hearing it from like a real caring person as opposed to a piece of paper that they can then talk back with and have a conversation with something as huge as graduation, that's so much more important than just having a little PDF in front of you that's like, well, you do these things. Yeah, but I just want to hear it. Like I want to be sure.
Right.
So that's huge. That's really cool.
It is.
Eating with families. That's cool.
Thank you.
Well, stick around with us as we do our outro. So our outro is just a chance we try to put just a little bit more positive energy in the universe, share something that we've read or learned or we think that is good for the good of all education.
Can I just say what you're doing right here is putting positive energy into the universe. I'm so excited. You guys are so positive. This is such a great platform. This has been amazing. I mean, I have been entertained. I'm serious. I love it. This is amazing. You guys are amazing.
Thank you. It's fun. Thank you.
Well, I don't take compliments very well, so I'm going to ignore that you said anything.
I've been complimenting him for years. It's horrible. It's horrible.
We appreciate it. It's super important. I wanted to. This is what I wanted to share. This is an article off of Edutopia. And Edutopia, of course, is a great location to find just like little niblets of things that you can take into your practice, or whether you're an administrator, a teacher, or whatever level you may be. And so this whole article is about why are some kids really thriving during remote learning. We've had a lot of conversations around kids who are, don't have access to tech. They're behind. They're hurting for other reasons. And I don't ever want to downplay how important that is. But I do want to point out this article has some really great ways of looking at why remote learning has been good for some learners, especially when we talk about the ideas of what differentiation is really supposed to mean. So the benefits of self-pacing, and our recent guest, Janae, a senior who's graduating this year, really spoke to that. This idea that she gets to decide when she wakes up, she gets to decide when she logs in, and she gets to decide the pace of which things get turned in throughout the day, and she'll get her work done. But it's at whatever leisure she needs to decide based on other things that she wants to do. and there's power in that, right? I mean, not everybody is quite mature enough to handle that, but I think that this is a great thing to kind of point out. And I think it's cute that they talk about school starting at 8 a.m. In Gwinnett, folks, in case you don't know, we start at 7:10 in the morning at the high school. So kind of continuing along to some of the other points here. So time to rethink the overextended kid, right? So the quote here says, for my students, there are some that are thriving. I think it's partially because so many things like sports and social activities are no longer happening, and they have more time than ever to work on schoolwork. There's so much value in sports and extracurriculars. That's part of what keeps students engaged in the whole process of learning sometimes. It's a carrot for a few, and it's what brings joy to many. But I think this is a really great insight into part of what's helping some students is the extra stuff's not there anyway, so why not focus on what is in front of me? So there's potential there as well. It talks about research has found jam-packed schedules can be a significant challenge for a child to juggle. And I think that's true of adults too. The more we jam into our lives, the harder it is for us to juggle. One of the benefits we've talked about in the past is this has caused all of us as adults to slow down. We've had to reconcentrate on things that matter probably more, like family.
Yeah.
Spending all that time with one another. And then this is great too, lowering the stakes. The reality is big tests are gone. We are not worried as much of how many summative tests do we have. We talk a lot more about the importance of formative right now. And Glenn, you've set this up beautifully in your own virtual classroom space where, it's always this encouragement of like, look, you're just looking to learn, you're trying to get better. Here's your feedback, here's your feedback, here's your feedback. This whole remote learning piece has caused us to have to do that.
Yeah.
Stakes have lowered, right? I mean, how powerful is that for some kids of like, man, I don't have to have this anxious pit in my stomach because I get to pick my own pace. I get lots more communication and feedback directly from my teacher. At least I think the teachers that are most engaged in the process.
Yeah. I would say, honestly,
yeah, go ahead.
75% of my students have higher grades now than they did before DLD. And I know that that's not true for a lot of teachers across the board, but I know that I think it comes from like this article is talking about, being purposeful with the kind of work we're assigning, with our expectations, and I think that says a lot with how students respond to it. And if we're doing the right work in our digital classrooms, we're getting the right results from our students. But we've got to be really purposeful with our teacher actions. So.
Yeah. And I thought this was really poignant too, just the reduced chatter, right? The students who have been victims of physical or verbal bullying while at school are likely to be relieved to be home and in a safe place.
Yeah.
We have talked about the flip of everybody being worried about the abuse of home, and that is still a very serious consideration. But what about the kid who is getting harassed at school every day and they are completely relieved of that, outside of, as long as they're willing to shut off some of their social media, they don't have to deal with that kid on campus.
Just the peer pressure.
Right.
The peer pressure of having to put on a front and a mask every day. Every day I put on my mask. Every day I put on my armor and I go into this building and I face off against, all these other competition. None of that's there anymore. That's huge.
And then again, right, getting enough sleep. For the most part, I'm sleeping a little bit more. I know that's not true of everybody, but there's something to be said for not having to wake up at 5:30 in the morning every day, and especially for our students whose circadian rhythms are very different than ours, right? So just really huge. And so
cool.
Just to kind of go back up here at the top real quick, because I want to give credit where credit is due. Nora Fleming is the author of this, so check that out if you want to read more about it. Utopia has a lot of other great articles out right now, but I thought that was more than worth sharing. So, all right, well, definitely out of time. So we want to thank everybody for continuing to watch us and connect with us. Daria, again, thank you for being our guest.
Yeah, so cool to meet you.
Yep.
Awesome.
We'll keep doing this. Yeah, it's going to be good. So everybody stay safe and healthy out there. You can find me on Twitter at @theprofjones.
And I'm at gchant668.
And we will catch you again soon.
Woo!